Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. It's time to do like actual good audio with an iPhone video and talk about Bakuman Volume 1, story by Sugumi Obha, art by Takeshi Obata. Now you might know these two as the creative duo behind the manga Death Note, which was like the hit anime in like 2008 it seemed, and Bakuman seemed to have come out at just around the same time as Death Note, maybe like immediately after it. So I kind of knew, okay, this will be fun, like a story about two kids trying to become a manga writer artist duo by a manga writer artist duo. So and I really enjoyed Death Note, so I thought, well, no matter what, I'm gonna have a good time, and I had a good time. But Bakuman is the comic you need to give to any young person who wants to create any kind of art or story. There is so much here. So these little white cards are things I just marked as potentially maybe worth a whole video all by themselves just while going through it. So if you have a young artist in your life, or if you want to be a writer or artist, go read Bakuman, absorb it, and then think of this as me trying to underscore what I think are the important things to consider from this. There's so much, and I don't have time to go on tangents if I want to look at what I've marked. So we're going to let my cards spark my memory rather than just trust me to go down memory lane and get lost. So the setup of this is that oh no, I lost a card. We're going to do it live. So the artist is Moritaka Mashiro, and the writer is Akito Takagi. And they kind of have a comedic foils to their personality. Akagi's a little bit more, kind of has a criminal way of thinking. The nickname for him is the Japanese word for criminal. And Mashiro is smart, but kind of lazy. He's just decided, well, I'm going to become a businessman. That's what you're supposed to do. I'm bored, but I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do to be a good student. And then he draws, though. And so what Takagi does is he kind of reminds him of what his dream is, and through his sort of raw enthusiasm makes it possible for the two of them to become a manga team. So the reason I marked this page is this gives really good practical advice to a young person who wants to create a story or comics but doesn't know what that entails. So they talk about the practical improbability of it. So I gotta get this kid's name right. Mashiro. Mashiro's uncle was a joke manga artist, and Mashiro calls his uncle a gambler because unless you are in like this really tiny percentage of people, like 0.001%, you're not going to get rich making manga. Plus, they're splitting any potential profits. So they're like 0.0005% likelihood of making it big as manga artists. And that's a really sobering way of kind of making clear, if you're smart about what you're trying to do, what it is to undertake trying to be a manga artist in Japan. It's really like being a venture capitalist and going off down the Oregon Trail to pan for gold or something because it's undiscovered territory. It's a really adventurous prospect for someone to undertake. And there's also an element of romance to it. I love when they reference real world manga, and later they've referenced manga I've never heard of but sound really interesting. So they do like this gag about how because of the declining birth rates, they'll never be able to beat Dragon Ball and One Piece because there will be less kids in contemporary Japan than there were back in the 80s. And there are lots of nice little details. What was I going to say about Obata's art? Oh, sometimes Obata uses a lot of, I think, photo reference or 3D reference, but Obata has a pretty unique manga style where it is distinctly manga, but it's not that, sort of typical Shonen Jump look to it. I'd call it maybe like a sophisticated or a classy style. So what's important about this, I think, is the kind of sheer silly romance. I laughed so hard when they went and he accidentally confessed his love to the girl he likes, but pretty much wanting to get the girl becomes a driving force among other driving forces that motivates him to become a manga artist, because this is a story about a lazy, talented boy realizing that he has a dream and realizing that he's got to kind of stop being lazy and commit himself to bring that dream about. And I was just laughing during this whole interaction because, excuse me, burp squad. This is the kind of scene that can't happen in Western comics, and this illustrates, I think, what the manga industry has, which I think the Western mainstream superhero comic industry has lost, and that's appreciation for the up-and-comer. And I'll say it, appreciation for the male perspective in storytelling. So I've been watching old Gamergate videos because I want to take a kind of like trip down memory lane and look back on Gamergate to see what we can learn about it. But one of the interesting things is even before Gamergate, a lot of the YouTube, SJW, anti-SJW stuff was about feminism in pop culture and about the question of do contemporary feminists understand what the male perspective is. And some feminists like Camille Paglia have called Boyhood like one of the greatest forces for creativity in the history of Western civilization. So there are feminists who get the importance of healthy young men having a healthy feeling of masculinity about them. Even some of those radical studies I've been reading where they talk about toxic masculinity, they get that it's important for young men to have a feeling of confidence in their masculinity. But that somehow hasn't been communicated to the lay feminist tweeting men are trash, male tiers. So there's something wrong in American feminism, which makes something like this, which would be kind of like amusing but interesting, seems so bizarre. Like I kept holding this away and thinking, is this even real? So what's going on here? Oh, I can't get the kids' names. Come on, weebs, anglicize your names into something like a male Western chauvinist pig like me can pronounce. Okay, Takagi and Mashiro. So Takagi is describing what he likes about girls. And I won't read it all because that would take way too long. We're getting towards 7 minutes already. But pretty much, Takagi has this idea that smart girls aren't necessarily the girls who do the best in class and get the best grades. He thinks smart girls are the girls who present themselves as classy because they get what people like. And they do, which is nuts, right? It's such a strange, crazy way of looking at the world. But it comes from this perspective that actually not all people are created equal. Yikes, which is a countercultural kind of idea, but it has reality if you look at how much people either succeed or fail. So some people seem to be born, with rich circumstances, or they're born with natural talents, or they're born with the right connections that help them succeed in life, right? Which is where privilege theory and intersectionalism comes in. But in manga world, in this world, rather than saying, oh, we must feel oppressed and marginalized by this, these kids see opportunity. They see like a crazy mixed up world where you can get stinking rich if you get to the top of the mountain, and they want to get to the top of the mountain. They're poor kids who want to get stinking rich, and I love it. I love that. And I kind of love the sort of comedic, what would I call it, benevolent sexism of these young lads and their quest to be like the best in manga. It's something that could never happen in a Western comic. So this whole conversation about how they like girls with feminine charms and think they're smart, and they find it sexy when a girl is smart, but they like a smart girl with class, that is just so peculiar. That's something I don't see in Western comics. It's maybe in indie Western comics, but certainly not in a mainstream thing for children. Like a mainstream thing for children, this would all be about deprogramming them from patriarchy or whatever. But this presents, there we go, the male perspective. So the male perspective, it's not that boys are superior to girls, it's that boys are different than girls. And we both kind of have to learn about each other. And if you just dismiss this perspective as toxically masculine, then you're just not going to understand it. You're going to deprive yourself of sort of the raw enthusiasm that young boys like this have. So the reason I said give this to any young artist is this will show to a young boy what kind of having that hunger and that drive looks like, and it will show to the young girl who wants to be an artist. Oh, I have it. One of the big feminist art essays is why have there been no great female artists? And the conclusion, of course, is patriarchy. The patriarchal system has made it impossible for young women to become great female artists. And I can't talk about Virginia Woolf right now because that's way too off topic. I got to control the tangents. But pretty much my thesis is the reason there have been no great female artists is not because of patriarchy. The reason is because the feminists taught the next great female artist to make period blood art. There have been potential great female artists, but they have been miseducated into wasting their talent and potential on the personalized political, radical identity politics art, rather than devoting themselves with like this hunger and this passion to creating something. So a young girl who learns the moral of the story of Bakuman, even though it's told from a male perspective, will have a leg up on any academic feminist who's an expert in, the study of toxic masculinity, because she will have understood boys, talking from a boy's perspective about the kind of things boys want to do. They want to get rich, they want to impress the girls, they want to be on top of the pile and beat all the other boys. And so if a young person learns that perspective, they can walk into telling their comic story without being blind. They go in kind of knowing what it takes to be the best. And this underscores it. So Mashiro's father, we never see Mashiro's father, but we feel him as a presence. He later has one brief phone conversation with his son, and it's clear that he's a really busy businessman. So when Mashiro tells his mom he wants to be a manga artist, she just says no, even though usually she goes and talks to his dad about these decisions. And then he's sitting there thinking about it, and then the mom comes in and she says, I talked to your dad. He said, let him do it. Men have dreams that women will never be able to understand. Is this real? Did I just read that? So the point is that Mashiro's dad gets him. And even though Mashiro's dad is kind of a stuffy businessman, he gets the silly dream of wanting to be a manga artist and of the importance of his boy having an inner fire, that his boy was doing good in school and getting good grades, but didn't have an inner fire to accomplish anything. And being a manga artist can be the thing that gives his boy that inner fire. And the dad gets that. I mean, this is kind of blunt, but it's exactly what this story needed to have. We needed to have this sort of contrast between the lazy boy he once was and what he's becoming. So pretty much when his uncle died, he thought that his uncle committed suicide, but it turns out his uncle just worked himself to death, which is sadly kind of both a Japanese cultural problem and a problem within the manga industry, death by overwork. So they talked to his grandpa, and there are a couple little fantasy elements in this. So it turns out the grandpa has kept the drawing studio preserved kind of in memory of his son who died, the manga artist who died. Now the nephew gets to inherit that as kind of a legacy as he becomes a manga artist. I really love that they showed the storyboards. So Oba's the writer, and he has this sort of cartoony, goofy style, and he just draws basically what happens. And then Obata redraws it and kind of, makes everything look sexy and nice and awesome. So it's just really interesting to see the writer, drawing kind of cute, fun drawings. Like he could have been like a joke, kind of comedy manga artist himself. So you can tell that they have a really good back and forth relationship, which I am positive informed some of the mannerisms and behaviors of the two main characters. Now, when they start getting into the studio and seeing, all of their uncles, like the drawing reference collection, the manga collection, his artworks, this is where like the young person would start, in the context of a fun, romantic, comedic story with a lot of drive and energy, would start learning some really practical stuff about what it takes and the tools of the trade and the process. So the writer sees examples of storyboards, and they're kind of impressed by just the sheer amount that the uncle drew, even though they thought he kind of drew badly and just drew silly joke manga. They're getting impressed by how much you can produce if you have this steady work ethic. And so this gets them more pumped up. They're continually getting pumped up, and they're talking about what I think must be actual manga. Like some of these could be like made up titles, but like Tomorrow's Joe, which is like a boxing manga. And now I want to go read Tomorrow's Joe because they talk about this as something which really informed them, which means that the actual writers, the real life writers, are getting to write a love letter to the manga industry. I think that's what's beautiful about this. They are looking back on what prompted them and what inspired them, and they're pouring that into these characters as kind of like the next rising generation. This is his conversation with his dad. I just thought this was beautiful. I don't know what this manga is or if it's ever been anglicized, but I want to try to find this after seeing this beautiful bit. So he calls his dad, like really briefly, and then the dad pretty much tells him that his uncle wasn't a gutless coward. He wasn't the type of person who'd kill himself. He was the kind of guy who would buckle down and keep working. So it's clear that the dad had enough affection for his younger brother that he's okay with his son pursuing that path. So the dad says, Moritaka, have you read the manga Star of the Giants? Huh? Yeah. Then you know that Ryoma Sakamoto phrase, don't you? Uh-huh. Now remember, you like tomorrow's joke. So the dad, the businessman, has read manga, and he knows the importance of those kind of stories for a young man. So even though he has a different life path from his son, and even though they know his son is fighting the odds if he wants to be a big successful manga artist, the dad gets the importance of a young man's perspective as informed by fantasy stories for a young man. So, thanks, Dad. You don't have to say anything else. Ryoma Sakamoto's phrase, if you are a man, plunge forward as you die, even if you are dying in the gutters. As for Joe Yabuki, he gave all he could and burnt into white ash. My uncle plunged forward into death and burnt into white ash. My dad tried to tell me what I should do as a man without using famous phrases from manga. I'm not going to do this half-heartedly. Manga, Miho Azuki, that's the girl he likes. I'm going to pour my life into this. Oh my gosh. This is great. Great stuff. They go to see Azuki's mom, and this is where like the fantasy bit comes in. So Masashi, come on. Mashiro's uncle, the comedy manga artist, fell in love with this girl, but they never finalized it. They never went out. They never got engaged. They just exchanged letters through their life because his uncle kept waiting until he was a big manga artist to be ready to ask her out. And then it turns out that her daughter is the girl that Mashiro likes. So there's like this destiny thing to it. Like his uncle loved this woman, but it never worked out. He loves her daughter, and they can't believe it. So they go to see her, and she's like a really cute mom. Like she's embarrassed that they read the letters, and they're like profusely apologizing for it, and they think she's cute. They're young men. They think the thoughts of young men, even though they're innocent. They're very innocent. They don't like think pervy sexual thoughts. They like pretty girls. They like romance. They like the sort of silly idea of unrequited love and of pure innocent love of one's youth. They are just so obviously two masculine young men with big dreams who want to do big things and impress girls, but they're different from each other, and I love it. It's a great comedy, and it's a great story for like feeling for them and wanting to see them succeed. So I don't know why I marked this. Oh, okay. This was funny because there was a great setup for it. So remember when he was kind of joking about how he liked a girl with class, and then the mom takes one look at him and said, I've never been too fond of men who are extremely smart. Girls tend to like boys who are a little bad, you know? That's a sick roast on him. And it's funny because it was set up by his comments on girls he liked having class before. It's well paced, and the humor isn't like teehee, it's random. The humor comes from sort of their unbridled enthusiasm and the back and forth between them, and then the circumstances of life, they're running into it with all of this just raw, unbridled energy. Why did I mark this? I guess I just thought it was sweet and cute, and then so pretty much at this point he's now no longer saying, well, I'm going to become a manga artist because I just think it'd be a fun thing to do, or because I want to get the girl. Now he's kind of like determined that this is his destiny. He has a lot of reasons why he wants to do this and fulfill this dream, and he's going to work at it. And you immediately start seeing this have consequences in his life. He immediately starts doing poorly on tests as he is pouring himself into this, and you see how this is actually a really good team. And it took a while for them to gel as a team. So it wasn't like, oh, click, we're going to make a manga. It's destiny. We're all so great. They kind of had to feel each other out and convince each other that this would work and that they could actually do it. And I love that. I love that both of the characters contribute something to the project they're working on. Okay, this. All right, this is apparently, what's this from? The Qualifications of a Man, story by Iki Iki Kajiwara, art by Noboru Kawasaki. I want to try to find this. Look at this stuff. Okay, can you imagine giving this to a kid who wants to be an artist, like a boy or a girl? The title is The Qualifications of Being a Man. Either way, this is great stuff. Listen to this. Qualification 1, never create a superficial piece of work. Turn every drop of your blood into ink. Qualification 2, do not indulge yourself in the flowers of temporal popularity. Dig up the soil to spread your roots deep below. Qualification 3, if you attain some status, do not linger on it. If there is a choice between peace and storm, choose the storm. Qualification 4, never cry after being defeated. Research your defeat, and let that be the mother of your victory. Qualification 5, even if you follow all the qualifications, never think that you are always correct. Let everyone around you be your master. Social justice teaches you to be the master of everyone around you using a victimhood mentality. The manga industry is built on this idea of raw individuality, competing with people to try to get to the very top and be the big guy on campus. It is the capitalist masculine dream, really. It's the dream of the frontier. It's the dream of being a cowboy and looking like Clint Eastwood and going off into the frontier to fight off bandits and save beautiful pioneer women from, evil banditos, right? But facilitated into creating art. And in a peaceful society, in a rich society, creating art becomes the outlet for that kind of raw energy. And girls are not kept out of that just for being girls. It's just that you kind of have to be weird in the first place. Boy or girl, you kind of have to be weird to have a dream like this. And it's good for girls to get... Okay, that's why I thought of Virginia Woolf earlier. Virginia Woolf is this well-loved feminist author. And if you read her, I wish every feminist was as thoughtful and a brilliant writer as Virginia Woolf, because what was clear Virginia Woolf did was she had massive appreciation for the history of Western literature, which meant that when she wrote a feminist critique, she actually could write a really solid critique and write it really well. So the best thing on patriarchy I've ever seen is Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. But Virginia Woolf appreciated this aspect of the human psyche, this aspect of the male soul that, makes young men kind of dream big and be kind of stupid, but be really enthusiastic and just bend their head down and barrel forward. And that's the attitude any man or woman needs to be a great artist or a great writer. Okay, now what's interesting is then, in addition to giving you great stuff, we're at 22 minutes. Then it gives you other theories, right? So if the qualifications of being a man is sort of great advice on how to buckle down and have that perspective, then the stupid kid's name, I love this character, I can't even remember his name, Mashiro. Mashiro's uncle had his own 3 qualifications of the lazy artist, or not the lazy artist, of the artist who isn't good. So if you're the artist who isn't good, here are the 3 qualifications you must have. Number 1, conceit. Seriously believe that you are better than others. Qualification 2, do your best. Qualification 3, luck. So what that means is we're actually getting different perspectives on how to succeed as an artist from different kinds of artists. So not only are you giving someone who reads this manga a perspective on the difficulty of becoming an artist and actually succeeding at it, you are also giving them alternate perspectives on how to go about doing that. I've never seen so much interesting stuff about the process of being an artist facilitated into one thing. I love reading artists talk about their work, talk about the process of teaching their students. This is what Bakuman is, clearly, is 2 creative people trying to pour everything they've learned about their experience in the manga world into these characters to give it this sense of life. So they find out they've got some competition. There's a 15-year-old manga artist who's winning Tetsuka awards, and that's who they're competing with. More beautiful storyboards with kind of the silly style from Oba, and then the more careful style from Obata. Wow, that's really their names? Oba and Obata. They even sound good together. It's like a comedic duo. Oh man, I don't want to lose that page. Okay, I was just going to say about this page that this is another example of the cutesy thing, that kid whose name I can't remember, white-haired kid, has a dream about how it'd be cute for the girl to be dressed in a maid outfit, right? That's the most fan servicey thing in the entire thing, because even though they're kind of young enthusiastic boys who like pretty girls. They're not pervs, and I like that. That's actually a part of their character. Neither of them like pervy stuff. They kind of decide at the beginning what kind of manga should we do, and they look at what's popular in the industry and make a decision based on what they think will sell. Come on, SJW Marvel. What this is telling you is that the manga industry cares a whole lot about dollars and readers and giving the readers what they actually want. So the point I'm making is when they were thinking about making a manga, they decided they didn't want to do like a rape thing or an abortion thing or like a really edgy mamby-pamby thing. They decided they wanted to do like a good old, masculine adventure story, maybe with like swords in it, right? Because lots of good manga have swords in them, right? So the point I'm making is that this is laddish behavior. This is sort of the good-natured, kind of pig-headed, but fun and harmless masculinity of young men. And what's interesting is that Mashiro kind of responds to it angrily because he doesn't like thinking like pervy thoughts. So there's also a contrast between how innocent they are. Mashiro is the more innocent of the two. I love that. It's great for comedy to have that foil between the two. All right, so there's also this interesting, I think I'm going too long, there's an interesting little bit about the process of having an editor, and they have a story about an editor who destroyed an entire final draft in front of the artist. Now, this is probably a made-up story, but that became the motivation for the artist to go right back to work because the editor at least read his entire work this time, even though he destroyed it. Now, they acknowledge this is probably a made-up story in this, but this little urban legend it's meant to be the kind of thing like that. That's the urban legend you tell, your artist friend to get them all fired up and ready to go. And now they're all fired up and ready to go. And I'm all fired up and ready to go. Because that's actually a really sick idea. That it's actually better if someone reads your whole work and hates it and destroys it, rather than if they just look at a couple pages of it and ignore it. Being ignored is the worst thing that can happen to you as an artist. Being hated is the second best thing that can happen to you as an artist, and then succeeding is the best thing that can happen to you as an artist. And then I love like all these just ideas they come up with, like a sunglass pitcher. It's about a blind kid who becomes a world champion and all this stuff. So what's clear is that they're brimming with energy. They're learning how to pitch their ideas. They're learning how to be able to sum up a story down to like a core concept that sounds sexy, and they decide they're going to write a comic just to try it. Uh-oh. What happened? Okay, I lost my phone, guys. I'm sorry. Well, I was on the last page of Bakuman anyway, and I was just going to say 100% highest recommendation. Yeah, I can't bloviate anymore. So 30 minutes, we got to call it there. It's wonderful. This is fantastic. I am so happy I read this. Get it for a young artist. And I'm definitely going to try to track down more. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. I'll catch you later.